Je remercie la distinguée.
I thank the distinguished representative of Haiti. I now give the floor to the distinguished delegation of the Russian Federation.
Благодарю, госпожа председатель.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are grateful to the Undersecretary General, Ms. Melissa Fleming, for her thorough explanation of the priorities and current tasks at the DGC. The Russian Federation aligns itself with the statement of Venezuela delivered on behalf of the Group of Friends in defense of the UN Charter. In our national capacity, we would like to point out the following. Madam Chair, we note the efforts of the DGC to circulate current information at a time of growing competition in the global information realm. We commend the increase of the scope of the audience at the official online resources of the organization, including through actively undertaking multimedia work and through timely photo and video coverage of meetings of the Security Council, the GA, and other bodies. We're particularly grateful to the interpreters and translators for their ongoing work to translate informational materials and to interpret at meetings in all 6 official languages. We believe that it is important to support and develop multilingual formats for providing materials. We need to improve the work of UN Web TV as well, specifically as regards the use of metadata. We support the efforts of the Secretariat to achieve language parity, including using contemporary technologies. That includes artificial intelligence, but there should always be monitoring of these activities by a person. A fundamental source of guidance in the work of the DGC must remain impartiality, accuracy, and the timely provision of information. The official resources of the UN need to ensure equal access by all relevant audiences to all substantial issues on the international agenda. When these issues are covered, there should be no selectivity or politicization, and no using the media toolkit of the UN to advance narrow group political narratives is unacceptable. Chair, we're compelled to note that the global media landscape continues to encounter major challenges and to be dangerously fragmented. There is ongoing repression against Russian journalists and media in the West as well. This is particularly evident in the Baltic states. And that fact is expressed in direct bans on activities, refusal to grant credentials and visas, freezing of accounts, pressure from special services, administrative persecution, and criminal cases. Spurious pretexts are used to purge the national media landscape of alternative viewpoints. This practice is grossly at odds with international commitments of states in terms of the free expression of opinion, and it undermines trust in international mechanisms to protect journalists. We're particularly concerned by the situation with the physical safety of journalists in conflict zones. There are ongoing deliberate attacks by the Ukrainian armed forces against representatives of Russian media and war correspondents. Recently, 2 weeks ago, there was a strike by an armed Ukrainian drone, and it struck a group of videographers from RIA Novosti. It killed correspondent Ivan Zuyev. In 2025 alone, the Kiev regime has killed 6 staff members of Russian media that were engaged in editorial activities, and some of the staff were wounded to various degrees. We wish to emphasize that the UAF's bloody reprisals against our correspondents must be unequivocally condemned by relevant structures and their authorized persons. Chair, we also wish to note the destructive activities of a number of transnational IT corporations that have a de facto monopoly on access to the global audience. There are private platforms that are acting as intermediaries in circulating information. Sometimes they set rules that haven't been agreed at the intergovernmental level. They are arbitrarily changing moderation standards, and they are engaging in sanctions of official accounts, the so-called shadow bans. This concentration of authority with insufficient transparency and responsibility creates the risk of ever greater fragmentation of the digital realm. It undermines the basic rights and freedoms of the audiences. There's a need for a systemic and collective response to these challenges. The Russian Federation has been consistent in its advocacy for strengthening the role of member states in forming the rules in the information sphere. We stand for the transparent governance of the digital space. One key point of guidance is forming universal international legal basis for the internet intermediators based on the UN Charter and universally recognized norms of international law. We stand ready to substantively discuss law enforcement practices and the development of transparent mechanisms for moderation, appeals, and oversight of algorithmic systems. Yet all documents in this context need to be issued following full-fledged consultations with involvement of all interested member states. Madam Chair, we simply cannot fail to respond to the baseless insinuations of the delegations of Romania and the Republic of Moldova against my country. We roundly reject the attempts to say that Russia is engaged in some hybrid schemes or any other alleged intervention into elections or into the information space. These politicized statements are not arguments, and they're certainly not proof at our global organization. The actual state of facts is quite the opposite. In these states, we have a documented systematic restrictions against Russian and Russian language media. Moldova has closed Sputnik Moldova. They've blocked Russian language sites, and there are bans on the rebroadcasting of Russian content. As of February 2025, over 6 resources have been blocked. There's been the revocation of 17 television and 3 radio licenses. Turning now to Romania, from the 28th of February 2022, there's been the curtailing of access to Sputnik Romania and RT, and the regulator has also banned the rebroadcasting of Russian channels and has engaged in punitive monitoring of the redaction policy with fines and warnings. There's an additional point, the public statements by Pavel Durova about the attempts of the French Special Services to purge before the election Telegram channels in Moldova and Romania. We're talking about direct political pressure on a private platform, but for some reason, these countries have preferred to remain silent about that in their statements. Madam Chair, in closing, I want to call upon the DGC to continue to act stringently in accord with its mandate. It needs to unfailingly adhere to the principles of objectivity and impartiality. We trust that the work of the Committee on Information will continue to be, will fit into the spirit of consensus, which was affirmed at its 47th session, and we hope it will respect multilingualism as the fundamental value of our organization. Thank you.